In early 1939, Benito Mussolini ordered an invasion of Albania, a country which Italy already dominated in almost every way that mattered. Albania's dictatorial king, Zog I, had been cooperating closely with Fascist Italy since the mid-1920s, to the point that the Italian-led Albanian army offered basically no resistance to the invaders from across the Adriatic. So, why invade what you already control? And for that matter, why was Italy so interested in Albanians? In between the two world wars, why and how did both pre-fascist and fascist Italy try to colonize Albania? Well, Albania was on Italy's radar long before Mussolini's black shirts marched him into power in October 1922. With mixed success, the Italians have been trying to establish an Albanian satellite since the eve of World War I. By April 1939, when Mussolini made his move, the threat of a resurgent Germany had fully seized the focus of Europe's democratic powers, and the Balkans, which in the years surrounding World War I were the site of heated diplomatic brinkmanship, were now seemingly Italy's to exploit. Widespread among Italians and gospel to the fascists was the notion that Italy's suffering in the First World War merited more awards than their actual territorial gains, and that so-called mutilated peace contributed to Mussolini's rise. Taking Albania, which took a grand total of 2 days, was neither his first nor last aggressive move, although it was the last time he was properly successful. Both pre-fascist Italy, a liberal democracy if a flawed one, and later Mussolini's regime had two reasons for being interested in Albania. First, strategic possession of the Albanian coast would secure Italy's flank against the Habsburg Austro-Hungarian Empire and later Yugoslavia. Control over the Strait of Otranto, only 50 miles wide at its widest, achieved through controlling the port of Vlora, Valona in Italian, would make the Adriatic Sea effectively an Italian lake. Then, Albania was subject to Italian nationalistic imagination as part of a greater terra irredenta, rightfully Italian lands. Today's Albania first became part of the Latin world under the Roman Empire, and in later centuries its coastal cities were key outposts of the Republic of Venice. When the Ottoman Turks began to move into the Balkans in the 14th and 15th centuries, some Albanians fled to Naples and Sicily, where they formed well-integrated communities. By the mid-19th century, the many Italian states had united. In an age of nationalism, historical ties across the Adriatic Sea compounded into an idea of the Adriatic coast, including Albania, being a natural extension of Italian civilization. There was a third motivation behind the actual invasion, the impetuousness of the Duce, who couldn't tolerate being upstaged by Germany's 1938 Anschluss of Austria and annexation of the Sudetenland. Before Mussolini, as Europe teetered towards World War I, Albania was still a part of the Ottoman Empire. Under Liberal Prime Minister Giovanni Giolitti, Italy set the stage for Albanian independence when it attacked the ailing Ottomans in 1911. The Italians seized Libya and the Deccanese Islands. Smelling blood, former Ottoman subject states dismembered the Ottomans' remaining European domain in the two Balkan Wars, and, cut off from Constantinople, in 1913 Albania emerged as an unstable principality under the protection of the Great Powers. Those powers promptly went to war. Within months of Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination in Sarajevo, Albania was invaded by the kingdoms of Serbia, Montenegro, and Greece. In late 1914, a new Italian Prime Minister, Antonio Salandra, ordered the navy to occupy the strategic island of Soseno across from Vlora, and then the city itself in December. In April 1915, he agreed to the secret Treaty of London with the Entente powers, in exchange for promises of territorial compensation, including a protectorate over Albania. Italy would join the fight. The issue of war participation viciously split Italian politics between a largely pro-war establishment and the socialist left, which supported neutrality. The plan was to conquer territories from Austria-Hungary. In actuality, Italian Commander-in-Chief Luigi Cadorna's outdated tactics led to 12 inconclusive battles along the Isonzo River over 2 years of bloody stalemate. Most of Albania was occupied by the Austro-Hungarians after 1915, with the Italian expedition holding only the south. When the Russian Empire collapsed in 1917, Austrian and German divisions were rushed to the North Italy front, overwhelming the Italians at the Battle of Caporetto and advancing 50 miles into Italy proper, only to face their own collapses in late 1918. The Italian delegation sent to the Paris peace conferences subsequently only realized a part of Italy's war aims. Out of the ashes of the Habsburg Empire, the new kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, Yugoslavia, was unexpectedly influential in exactly the lands Italy meant to annex. Meanwhile, partisans rose up against the Italian occupation of southern Albania. Giovanni Giolitti, back as prime minister in June 1920, put an end to the Vlora War by withdrawing from the city. In exchange, Italy annexed Ceseno, and Giolitti essentially achieved the strategic goal of control over the mouth of the Adriatic. He then settled the Yugoslav-Italian border by giving up Dalmatia in the Treaty of Rapallo that November, and on a principle akin to "if I can't have it, neither can you," both Rome and Belgrade recognized Albanian independence. The Italian establishment now found itself crushed between two competing outrages. On the left, the Socialist Party became a competitive political force, driven by war hardship and an economic downturn. On the right, nationalists and irredentists rallied against their betrayal by the political class, which had failed to sufficiently expand the nation through the Paris and Rapallo treaties. Across the political spectrum, lawlessness became increasingly acceptable, and it all came to a head in October 1922 when thousands of black-shirted members of the nascent National Fascist Party of Benito Mussolini marched on Rome. The king made him prime minister, beginning the fascist dictatorship. On the other side of the Straits of Otranto, Albania, poor, rural, and dominated by a landowning class dating from Ottoman times, was undergoing a failed experiment with parliamentary democracy. The prince appointed by the great powers had lasted barely 6 months back in 1914. A 1922 constitution gave way to revolution, only for that to be crushed by a conservative counter-movement backed by Yugoslavia. Led by Beys Shevchet Veladze and Ahmed Zogu, it saw the latter installed as president with wide-sweeping powers. In 1928, Albania became a royal dictatorship under King Zog I. Zogist Albania was never a formal Italian protectorate, but it became one in all but name. Mussolini began a thuggish foreign policy less than a year after seizing power. The Corfu crisis saw Italy bombard and occupy that Greek island in 1923, after partisans, either Albanians or Greeks depending on who you ask, near southern Albania, northern Epirus according to the Greeks, assassinated an Italian general sent to demarcate their border. The crisis, which was resolved in the old style of dealings by the great powers, foreshadowed the impotence of the interwar League of Nations and ended with Albania intact, Italy emboldened, and Athens humiliated. Albania really entered the Italian sphere in 1925, when Zogu, seeking funds to develop the country and consolidate his regime, gave Italian banks control over the Albanian treasury. By the start of his royal reign, the Tirana treaties had placed Italians in command positions within the Albanian army and police. For Italy's part, the idea was that a clientelized Albania could undergo peaceful Italianization. Case in point, the ethnic Italo-Albanians of southern Italy, descendants of medieval refugees. They validated the ambitions of Italian nationalists and pro-Italian Albanians alike, wrote Count Ciano, Mussolini's foreign minister. In the south, we have absorbed several 100,000 Albanians. Why shouldn't the same thing happen on the other side of the entrance to the Adriatic? King Zog was not on board with that plan. Not that he could do much about it while hooked on Italian credit. He relied on Italian military influence to protect him from his neighbors and domestic unrest alike. In a different timeline, he might have continued on as a neutered Italian puppet. But ours was heating up, and Mussolini was not particularly patient. In March 1939, Italy issued Zog an ultimatum to formally submit. The king refused, and on the 7th of April, Italian troops invaded. Resistance was brief and disorganized. The roughly 20,000 Italians, backed by their air force and navy, rapidly secured Albania's major ports before marching on Tirana. By the end of that day, Zog had fled to Greece. Victor Emmanuel III of Italy was declared King of Albania, and Zog's former ally, Velazzi, was made an Italian puppet prime minister. Fascism venerated conquest as a natural and desirable flex of state power. That said, as World War II drew closer, Mussolini found it hard to bridge the gap between his ideological extremism and Italy's actual military capacity. Taking Albania was also a response to the German takeover of Austria in 1938, which Italy had worked for years to prevent. When the new German Reich burst onto the scene in 1933, it had stolen Mussolini's limelight. It compared Germany's audacious militarization and expansion through the 1930s with Italy's drawn-out war in Ethiopia and Corfu holiday, and it was obvious, to Italian irritation, that they had been supplanted as Europe's fascist top dog. Albania was a chance for an easy victory, but Italian rule didn't last long. The south served as the launch point for Mussolini's disastrous invasion of Greece in 1940, and Albania was briefly expanded after the Germans diverted resources to back Italy in the Balkans. Italianization never got very far. Velazzi set up an Albanian branch of the fascist party, and Mussolini sent about 11,000 Sicilian and Venetian blackshirts to settle on the Albanian coast. But Italian Albania fell with fascism, and they were expelled post-war. King Zog was not restored by the new communist authorities. But don't worry, having made off with much of the treasury, he lived in luxury for the rest of his life. Before Italy ditched the Duce, it first had to accept him. To find out how liberal Italy gave way to Mussolini, you should check out the video to the left, or see how Italy colonized the island of Rhodes in the same period as they were meddling in Albania. Hopefully, I'll see you there. And as always, I've been James, and thanks for watching Look Back History.